So I'll call a meeting to order of the Hingham Municipal Lighting Plant Board for April 9th, 2024. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and all other applicable laws, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You're hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. We are indeed recording this meeting. Would anybody else like to record the meeting? I guess not. So we'll move along. We're going to end promptly at 8:50 today. So if there are things that we don't get to, we'll just bump them to the next agenda. And the first item on the agenda was to review this, where we are with the income adjusted rate, which we said thank you, Tom, for reminding us that we were going to review it every quarter and see how it's going. So do you want to present the data that you have, Tom?
I'll let Joan. Joan, do you want to present your data? Do you want me to share the spreadsheet? You're muted, Joan.
Yeah, Tom, can you share that?
Yep. Everyone see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's pretty much just a summary of what the actual numbers are. We started in January, we implemented in January with 123 customers. And as you can see, it's increasing a little bit each month, which is good. I also have the kilowatt hours there and the difference in the company's gross revenue because of the income adjusted rate.
Mm-hmm.
Each customer, the customer charge went down, as you can see below, by $308 a month. And they're getting a 10% discount in the capacity transmission and distribution charge. So if you have 400 kilowatt hours, they save about $838 per month.
Mm-hmm. So would you say 400 kilowatt hours is kind of average? And is that a number you use as an average?
Typically now they use 750 as an average.
Oh, okay. So they would be saving more than that?
Yeah.
Almost twice as much.
But a lot of these customers are in small or apartments or small houses, so the 400 might be more representative of that class of people, I guess.
Well, to arrive at the 400, Tom, I just took the 59,000 divided by 151 customers and it comes out to 3.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. That makes sense.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
So this is the average income adjusted rate customer is using 400. I see. Got it. Okay. Any thoughts, Tyler or Mike? Tyler, I can't see you on the screen, so just yell if you wish to speak.
Sure. Yeah, I have one. I just I think it's a great start to the program. And I think there's probably a decision time of whether or not we raise it. I'm probably comfortable with raising it, kind of like we talked about when you originally set out with the program.
Mm-hmm.
I think just based on those numbers, those people are not heating with heat pumps, so there's no heating load on their electric bill right now. Just looking at the numbers.
Mm-hmm. So my thought when I looked at it was the numbers are still climbing, and we're for that, but it's hard to say if we arrive at a stable number what that might be, but it looks like it's going up every month at this point. So I would suggest that we, I mean, $8 is a savings. It's not, I would have to leave it to the customers to say whether that was impactful enough for them. Obviously, if they sign up, it is. But I think that maybe we should revisit again in 6 months, see if the numbers are still climbing, so that we can make, make a good estimate of what the revenue impact is before we think about raising it, see if we get to more like a stable number.
I mean, if we project double what we have now, is the revenue impact going to be substantial?
Well, it'll be double, right? So it'd be $5,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so the change
I
in
mean,
revenue, that's a yearly fee, right, Joan? That's a yearly amount.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
The change in revenue is over what period?
Well, I did it by month here,
A
so,
month. Oh, it's a monthly. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's already a significant impact. Okay. I'm sorry, my brain doesn't do numbers automatically the way other people's brains sometimes do. So I appreciate the help. Okay, so I'm thinking we should continue to observe it for another 3 months and see where we are then. What do the other board members think?
I'm okay with that. I think what we'll see in Q2 is, typically the lowest point of the year for usage.
Mhm.
So if we really want to see what the impact might be, we'd have to wait till Q3 for the summertime to go by. That's when electric use is the most heavy for our for most Massachusetts customers. So
That's a good point.
I like looking at this data because we're looking at winter, and even though it's certainly, like Mike's saying, we may not be seeing homes that are heating via heat pumps and the extra electrical load. It is a peak season, and so it's going to be higher than the average. And so you can kind of make some assumptions based on that. But obviously, if we saw more data, we'd have a better decision to make.
Could we use this data set and project based on last year's kilowatt hour usage by those customers, what their annual usage would be?
it's gonna be pretty labor
Model.
intense to go in and determine what each customer's actual usage is. I mean,
Well, I mean, maybe take 10% of those that have signed up. I mean, we're averaging a lot, but I would rather see us move sooner rather than later on this.
And that would mean when?
The next meeting. If we can do some modeling and do some projections based on the set of customers that have signed up right now and use their last year's bills anonymously and put together a data set to project what it would be for the year.
that can be done.
I think that maybe if I was going to model this, that I would probably want to try and model it based on an average winter. We saw we're the warmest winter in 50 years across the country, around here as well. So we're probably, if we look at this data, we're probably looking at something on the low end of usage for winters, probably the lowest. So that might breed a little bit of caution to extrapolate this data.
So I've heard Tyler is suggesting that we wait through Q3, and I have suggested that we wait through Q2, and Mike has suggested we assemble some data and look at it again at the next meeting. I'm gonna try to arrive at a plan here. I don't know, Mike. I think the majority is leaning towards waiting longer than the next meeting. Would you accept revisiting this in 3 months? Would that be acceptable to you? And that gives a little more time to look, to assemble sort of a 10% database of information.
Again, I'm not convinced that 3 more months of data is going to tell us anything that we don't know already.
Well, we're gonna, from my point of view, we'll know how many customers will be on this program in another, I see there's, the number of customers is rising every month, so I don't think we can predict where it's gonna end up, from my point of view.
But isn't that always going to be a variable?
My expectation is that we'll get to a certain level where there'll be more of a state, the number of customers is not going to continue to rise until it includes all customers, let's put it that way. So at some point, there's going to be a stability point where most of the people who feel like they can take advantage of this program and it's helpful to them will have signed up. I'm assuming that.
And if the incentive to sign up or the benefit of signing up increases, again, we're likely to push the needle into more people signing up.
Right, so I would like to know at least kind of what the stable number is at 5% before increasing. Remember, we've discussed how it's very, very, if it turns out to be too expensive, it will be very, very hard to pull back on the incentive, nor would I want to. I just want to set something that something that is going to be helpful to people that we can actually afford. And without having confidence that we've reached even the number that will sign up at 5%, I don't know where that is. So I prefer to keep watching. I'm going to propose that we do what we said we were going to do and revisit again in 3 months. And not because it's my idea, but because it's halfway between Tyler and Mike's idea. And that we take another look at it in 3 months and see if we can determine any trends or directions.
So we'll look at it at the end of Q2.
Yeah, and then we may decide to look at the end of Q3 as well, but at least I think we will have more information. I think we'll have a more solid view on how many customers there will be at the 5% level.
Yeah, I'm comfortable revisiting every quarter, no matter what. So
Yeah, agreed.
it looks like some quick math, we're rising at about 10% a month.
Mhm.
That's the thing that gives me pause, just like Laura's saying, that's all.
Okay, so we'll see where that is in 3 months.
Shall
Okay.
we increase the amount of advertising? Can we put another note in the bills or?
Yeah, so Tom, if you could unshare, yeah, I wanted to talk about that exact thing, Mike. First I wanted to compliment Brianna and everybody who worked on the publicity for the kickoff of this rate. It was very impressive. You reached a lot of people. I just thought it was a wonderful start to it. And I wonder, like Mike, can we set sort of a steady rate at which we're going to be re-informing people about this income? We don't want people to forget. Like, could one of our bills every year include a flyer about it? And could we schedule regular reminders every 3 months or so on social media? Or something like that, have a communications plan that's just ongoing.
Yeah, I'll work with Brianna to put a plan together so that we have an ongoing plan and we're advertising it, on a regular basis.
Okay. Does that meet your question, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great, super.
Thanks.
It gave me a lot of confidence about, our doing more communications going forward, that I thought it was a really excellent effort. And I think we can do things like that going forward. Tyler?
Is there a new customer sign up package that goes out to new customers in the mail? And if so, then can we just make it a regular piece of that?
I'd ask Ellen I'm not sure what we do. I know, we don't send out a package, I don't think, to customers when they're signing up. They actually come to us to sign up. Ellen, can you
Yeah, I understand they come to you, but would
Yeah.
they then receive something in the mail or an email or anything after that? Any communication?
We actually do send out a welcome letter to all new customers, so we can include that in the welcome letter.
Oh, that would be great. Excellent.
And it is also in the start service form. So when someone fills out the start service form, they can check to apply for this.
Okay, great. Any more comments about this topic before we move on? Anybody from the public have comments or questions on this topic? Okay, so next we're on to the topic of upgrading the metering system to AMI. I promised that I was going to try to work on a financial model that might tell us when we could arrive at the moment when we would be able to afford to upgrade the whole metering system without going to town meeting for a bond to do it, which is how some other MLPs have done it recently, but so I did that and I went over it with Tom and with Joan. And the general principle of what I did was I looked at the depreciation fund and what we have coming in, what we expect to have come in. This year we have 5%, we're allowed to set aside 5% of our revenue for depreciation by special agreement from the DPU. I don't know if we will next year, but it's possible. It's a year by year thing where we make the request and they tell us if we can. So my assumptions included 5%, including next year, and then a return to 3%, which if we're still, working on socking away money for the transmission project, we might ask again and see, maybe some point, maybe they'll say no, but it's hard to predict. But in fact, the difference between 3% and 5% didn't have a huge impact on the model. And then I asked how the depreciation fund is used, other than our plan to set some something aside for the transmission project. And we have the capital budget, but out of the capital budget, as a general rule, excuse me, most of the things that are in the capital budget get paid out of general funds, except for vehicles, which Joan routinely assigns to the depreciation fund. So I looked at how the depreciation fund would go up each year based on the assumptions of what our revenue and the percentage that we'll have in it, how it will go down based on how many vehicles are in the capital budget. And then I asked Joan and Tom if there was an ideal minimum balance that they would like to keep in the depreciation fund at all times for safety's sake. And Joan said she thought she didn't, I mean, I'm speaking for you, John, you can speak for yourself, but my general impression was that she doesn't have a rule of thumb about that and is not aware of an accounting rule of thumb about that, but that she would feel comfortable if we had 1.5 times the year's capital budget in the depreciation fund in case of emergency. So I took a look at that to see when we might fall below or when we might fall above the minimum based on what we do with the depreciation fund. And the result was that in terms of setting aside money for the transmission fund, the goal is to be able to take $20 million out of the transmission, out of the depreciation fund for the transmission project, sorry. And we would be able to do that. I mean, we could do that today if we were doing the transmission project today, I think. Because starting at this year, there's 27 million in the depreciation fund. But I picked 2025 as the year for doing that on the theory that 2025, if we go to town meeting and get the bond, we would use it then to make the size of the bond lower. But again, the whole plan about how to go about financing it, especially the timeline may change based on how the permitting process goes, really. But so we could set aside that $20 million next year. Excuse me. And then in 2026, we would have, my question I wanted to know was, when could we assemble? And I used $5 million as the stub for the AMI metering project. When could we assemble $5 million from operations or from depreciation? So if in 2026 we assigned $2 million of say we put it in the capital budget in for 2026 at $2 million. Then we have $2 million. Then I went and looked at the Renewable Energy Credit Fund and how that has been piling up and how we have been spending funds on that for various projects. At the beginning of 2024, the balance in the Renewable Energy Credit Fund was 1.6 million. We sell RECs quarterly, and that adds to the fund. That's about I made an assumption of about $250,000 per quarter. Last quarter it was 217, so that may be high. But the one outstanding project that we have committed to for that fund is the finishing of the HMLP solar project. That's 1.2 million. So that would leave the after paying for that, there would be about $867,000 in the fund. Now let's assume that we decide that we are going to dedicate this fund to the AMI meter project, on the theory that probably helping people along to getting a time of use rate structure could be the very greenest thing that we can do in terms of helping people move off the dirty energy part of the energy cycle. It would have a huge impact for us all going forward. So if we say, let's use the Green Energy Fund for that, then by 2026, the year that we bring 2 million in from the depreciation fund, we would have $5 million to devote to that in Q3 of 2026. Now that is the assumption of 250,000 for RECs per quarter, which may be high. And of course, there are a lot of moving parts in all of this. A lot. And one thing that I noted was on the depreciation fund, while we're basically, even after taking out the $2 million for the meter project and 20 million for the transmission project, we're still in 2026 meeting the Jones recommended minimum of 1.5 times the capital budget in the depreciation fund. But in 2027, we're about $7 million below that. And the main reason is that many capital projects have been pushed off into the future to allow for assembling some funds for the transmission projects. The capital budget in 2027 is 13 million 6, whereas it's 9 million. That's 2027 is 13 million, but it's 9 million in 2026, 3 million in 2023, 3.5 million in 2024. So it's mainly because of how, what capital projects we've assigned to which years that we are then kind of below the Jones preferred comfortable minimum in 2027. So the capital budget also changes all the time. Things move from year to year, and depending on what makes sense in terms of how and when we invest these funds. But my takeaway from this, and what I want to ask the board your opinion about, is how would you feel about setting a goal of doing the AMI metering project in 2027? And having set that goal, we'll put it on the capital project, and then there's all these moving parts. We'll see how we get there, but the main change that makes for us is that we would not be using the Renewable Energy Credit Fund we would be setting aside all of that money for this project. Right now, the only project that we had planned that we were going to use those funds for at the moment was the landfill solar project, which we still cannot seem to get off the ground on. I suspect because it's too small to be financially viable. We've been unable to generate enough interest from a third party to do that. So I am suggesting we shelve the landfill project for us, but that we include it in the package of projects that we suggest to the town. They might want to put out an RFP. If you'll recall, we were going to suggest 5 or 6 projects that they could put out an RFP and see if they could get interest. And it's more likely that we could find somebody to do that project if it wasn't standalone. If it was part of a project, part of $1 million, 1 million megawatt, a 1 megawatt project overall, we'd be more likely to find somebody who is willing to do it. So And that was the only thing that we had currently had planned to use those funds for, so I wanted to, and for me, it would feel good to, rather than sit and wonder, when are we gonna be able to do this? Is just to set a goal and see if we can get there, and we can always reevaluate as time goes on and capital budgets change and so on. But I would feel better if we kind of put a pin in someplace on the calendar and said, we're gonna shoot for then. And Tom and Joan seem to think that that was a reasonable approach, so I don't want to speak for you. Feel free to speak up if you have thoughts about it, but I just also want to ask the board what you think about that idea. And don't all speak at once, please.
So I had a couple of questions on this. Where do we stand up against our peer munis in terms of the migration to AMI metering? I know a lot of the investor utility companies have already started that migration, and it's clear to me that there are a lot of benefits to going to AMI metering, both for the customer and for the light plant in terms of shaving costs. So I think it's great that we're looking to put target dates on our calendar, but how do we stack up against our peers?
I think the investor utilities, National Grid and Eversource have both come out and said they're going to move to AMI metering. Obviously for them, it's a huge investment, and my sense is that that's for them, that's going to be a number of years out. That's not happening, in the next year or two. So as far as the 2027, 3 years away, we're probably in line with the investor-owned utilities are doing. In the municipal world, it's a mix. There's some. I was talking to someone from Sterling not too long ago. They're on their second version of AMI now. They went to a system that early on, an early adopter, and that system didn't work out for them. So after, I think it was 7 or 8 years, they scrapped that system and went to a new system. So there's a number of municipals that have AMI. There's probably half and half at this point that as far as the metering goes.
So, but you say the adoption rate for AMI is about 50% of the munis. So
Currently, yeah.
about
I'm sure most of them, have a plan to move to AMI at this point.
But 50% adoption is about 20 munis. That's pretty good so far, I would say. And as a follow-up, I know the current metering system has a life expectancy. When would we be budgeting to replace that anyway?
Typically, a metering system is a 20-year investment. They typically say, 15 to 20 years. So I think this system was installed in 2007, Steve. I mean,
It was
17, 8.
we started in early 13 and finished in 16. But the shelf life for us would be, it won't be so much the meters, it would be the actual collector system. Whether Itron decides to make it obsolete. We get an obsolescence paper every 6 months, and they just shows older products kind of being, thought about being obsolete. We haven't seen those yet for the collectors, so they're also used for water and electric as well. So we're still years out.
Okay, so we have nothing in our budget for that.
No, that collection system we just installed.
That was in 21.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's still a matter of how quickly the equipment that we have, both the meters themselves and the collection system, becomes outdated, similar to a scenario of a laptop. What's the life expectancy before the technology moves on and the benefits become more than basically taking that equipment out of service and bringing in new equipment.
Yeah, Tyler.
I really like the plan, Laura. I love the idea of having a plan to move to AMI. Obviously it's something that a lot of places around the country are doing, although, anywhere from looking at dates from utilities, anywhere from 2022 through 2030. So some people are ahead. We're obviously digesting a lot of capital expenditure on infrastructure investment and transmission. So we spent money on new meters not too recently ago. So if we can get this in for 2027, I think it's a huge benefit for us. So I like that.
Yeah, I do too. Don't get me wrong. I'm playing devil's advocate here about the speed that we do things, but also I see the technology that can benefit from AMI metering moving into the marketplace. First, early adopters, but battery systems and other demand response technology is really just starting to mature. So as a prerequisite for those technologies coming to market at mass scale at affordable rates, I think it's good to have a target from when we set up that infrastructure of AMI meters. And I think 2027 is a reasonable goal. Absolutely. Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, I struggle with the idea of what does it mean to retire this infrastructure that we have before its expiration date. And I think the thing that convinced me that, hitting it halfway is maybe not such a bad idea is just that our customers are not getting the benefit of this new technology that's available. Our customers will be able to save money on their electric bills when we have this technology. And if we wait until the current meters fall apart, that's just another 10 years of customers being unable to tailor their electricity usage to bring down their electric bills. And I think having that opportunity for the customers was the thing that kind of pushed me over the edge and said, yeah, you know what, I think it probably is a good idea.
Yeah, there definitely is an opportunity cost for not going to AMI meters. There's no question about that. And that's an opportunity cost for both the customer base and HMLP.
Yeah. Okay, well, so maybe I'll entertain a motion to how would we phrase this? To set a flexible goal for installing AMI meters in 2027 based on.
Should we take questions from? Should we?
Yeah,
take
I will.
Yeah,
I'll just take the motion, and then I will take questions from the public. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So is that okay? Somebody
Yeah.
want to move that? I don't know,
So
Ellen,
moved.
did I get that in a
Second.
way that okay. Okay, questions or comments from the public, Sue?
Hi, thank you so much. First of all, Michael, I thought you were correct that comments from the public should be considered before you vote.
Absolutely.
But this one you voted to do something and I was saying.
We haven't voted. The motion is on the floor.
So the motion is on the floor.
We're
Okay.
still in the discussion phase.
Okay, great. I wanted to know, just for the record, when is the expiration date on the current metering system? You said that expiring it before the expiration date. So when is that?
Steve,
You
do
know,
have
we
an estimate on
currently
that?
have let me just rephrase that. Okay. My understanding is we have, and I remember this, I think it was 2017 that this metering was put in place. And so at the time that was put in place, how long did you say that would last?
So the collection system was put in place in 2017.
Right.
The meters Steve, I'll go to Steve on this.
So the meters, we started the installation of the meters in early 2013. They were completed in, I want to say, mid 2016.
Okay, that's all.
Then we went to a fully remote system deployed in 2021. So the difference is, prior to 21, we had a truck that would drive around, collect the
Right.
reads, and now we can just collect the reads from the office.
Right, so now we're proposing to do away with which thing? I'm confused. Are we going to go away with the meters that were finally installed in 2016? What exactly, and what is the savings to the customers, cost-wise? Not what the expense is. What are we saving for us? How many people do you anticipate will go to AMI or utilize that?
So everyone, it would be a system change, so everyone would go to AMI. And the thought behind AMI is you can do time of use metering, which
Okay, I
ultimately
get it.
saves the customers, you have the opportunity to save money on your electric bill every month by opting to use your electric at times when the price is lower.
Okay, and what will be the cost to households to do that? We've got about how many households currently are metered the way they are?
Well, we estimate that it would cost, I'm using $5 million because it's out in the future. You never know. It's the prices
Yeah,
change, but
yeah.
I'm assuming that $5 million would cover the cost of the infrastructure and go some way towards the, the installation, the work of installing them. But it's a number that we would get firmer on when we got closer, but that's what we're kind of using as an assumption. I mean, there would be no charge to customers to upgrade their meters.
Well, actually, since it's a customer-owned municipality, there is a cost. We're paying for that.
Well, of
change.
course.
Yeah, so that's why I seem to be doing that a lot lately when people say, no, that'll be the government. I said, well, who pays the government's rates? We do, the taxpayers. So this is a cost to the municipality, correct? So it means it is,
Well, it's the cost of the light plant, and
it's a cost to the ratepayers ultimately
the
because,
ratepayers, yep.
yes,
There
okay.
is a cost to the ratepayers, but there is also a saving to the ratepayers.
Well,
And an opportunity for ratepayers to save more.
I understand that, Michael, but my question is that an optional thing for them to do? Or is that going to be, I mean, in other words, if they want to save money, they can utilize this program, is that correct?
Yes.
So if they choose not to use it, then it will be no savings, correct?
There would be no choice.
Well,
everybody gets a
all have
meter.
choices.
Everybody gets an AMI meter,
Right.
whether or not you choose to use the data that's available from that to save on your electric bill is up to personal choice.
Okay, so there's no way of knowing now. Tom, you said someone out in Sterling was unsuccessful with their first program and that they are going to a new type of metering system and they're going to retire the old one. Did I understand you correctly?
You're muted, Tom.
My understanding out there is they went to an AMI system early. They were an
Ah.
early adopter of AMI, and that technology evolved, and they ended up removing that AMI system and installing a new AMI system.
Okay, so is there been research on, or when would the research begin on the AMI system that the light board and the municipality is selecting? When will that process start? If you're going to move to that?
We would probably start putting together an RFP with our requirements for the system about a year before we choose to
Okay.
put it in, I expect. And I had a look at, Concord went to town meeting for a bond to pay for an AMI system, and they put out their RFP, and I had a look at it. It's about this thick.
Yeah, I figured.
And they're trying to cover all their angles with their RFP. And by the time we do it, I think there'll be a lot of experience with it out in the municipal world. I remember that the rate consultants said, the gentleman who was our number one guy said that he had been skeptical about whether customers would use the data available to them from a system like this and actually, save money using a time of use rate system. And he said they do. The studies show that people do make those choices. So
I
that's kind
think
of-
I think it's certainly worthy of the light board looking to do this, and I support it, as a customer. I'm just concerned about what the product is, if it's proven. Is this all software driven?
it's hard. The meters are hardware, obviously, and then you
Right,
have
but
to
the
have the
use-
software that will gather the data and do the right thing with it.
So the software, which will be done by the customer, correct? They will be making those choices via software, right?
Yeah, no, the customer will change they'll look at their bill and they say, I wish I wasn't running my dishwasher right after dinner because
Right,
it would be
right.
cheaper if I did it when I go to bed. And that's the kind of choices that the customer makes to change their
then-
light bill.
So then they have to change their behavior to
Yes.
get the benefit of that.
You
Okay,
can, although some of these things, for example, with smart thermostats, you can set them so that they automatically change the behavior. You don't have to be doing it every day. A lot of these
Yeah.
smart appliances today, you can
Yeah.
set them up to the behavior you want, and then you don't
Right.
have to interact with them constantly.
big article on that in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago. It was interesting.
Right.
But anyway, okay, well, thank you for that clarification on that. Could I ask another question that I didn't ask earlier real quick? And it was really around the subject of open meeting. And I heard you say that you had a meeting with Joan and Tom, and then you started discussing very large figures.
Mhm.
Was that posted? Was that open meeting posted for the public to attend?
So the open meetings are of the board, and it was just me and Tom and Joan. It was
Oh, okay.
not a board meeting.
Okay, and then this meeting today, I went to the website and there was I couldn't find it. Is there a reason why?
I'm gonna ask Brianna about that, but evidently we had the wrong link on the website, and I think Brianna was taking it down and putting up the right link at the beginning of this meeting.
Okay, so there
because
was no, yeah,
there
there
was
was
a
no
mistake.
posting then. It wasn't me. I thought it was me that maybe I'm looking in the wrong place.
No, the meeting was posted with the town, but it wasn't on our website. We had the wrong webpage, which is absolutely my fault.
Okay, things get moved and I'm not the quickest savvy person on looking to find them. So, okay, that was just a point of clarification. Thank you so much.
Mistakes get made.
I'll be curious to see how this moves forward. I think it's an exciting opportunity, but we'll see. If you get the right infrastructure, it should make a difference.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public or questions about the AMI metering project? If not, I'll move to vote on the motion to set a goal of converting to AMI metering project in 2027, flexibly depending on how the finances go, just to put that in there. So all in favor, Mike?
Aye.
Tyler?
Aye.
Laura? Aye. Thanks very much. I feel better. I go to sleep at night, but before I go to sleep, I've been looking at the ceiling saying to myself, when are we ever gonna get going on this? And so I feel like we've gotten going in a very small way. So thanks, everybody. And the next item on the agenda is financing options for ratepayers for technology that might save them money. So let's ask Brianna to tell us where we are with that.
Sure. I had started to put together a whole presentation and proposal on this, but I think before we get to that stage, I wanted to have one meeting to just make sure that we have the right research questions as we go about this. And then general structure. We've found 3 different program structures so far that we talked about a little bit on the last meeting. So the tariff on bill financing. There's also on and off bill financing, which is a term I learned from MWIC. And then there's the participating lenders, local bank partnerships. So we have some examples of MLPs that are doing each structure. With Tom and I have a meeting with Tom and I have a meeting with MWIC next week to go through their pooled loan program, which is one potential way to fund this and to support the program. But I have a document that I'd like to briefly walk through that I thought would be a little bit easier than going through a whole presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. You should be looking at a Word document. So it kind of starts out with just some of the key questions that we're thinking about right now. And if the board has other questions that you think should be in this list, let me know so that I can kind of frame our research on it. But right now it's what type of program, so out of those three options I mentioned, is going to work best for HMLP and the ratepayers, maybe looking at some metrics like the return on investment for the different structures, and then the level of adoption that different structures can achieve. What funding is available either internally or externally to support the program. So I have a list of a couple of funding ideas right now. And then how sustainable are those different sources? So a lot of the existing financing programs we're looking at received grant funding. So I don't know how they're funding their program long-term, and they're trying to figure that out as well. So we talked about Taunton. They received the $1 million from their state senator who allocated it from the state funds. I believe Middleborough has funding allocated, so I'm waiting to kind of touch base with them more. Holyoke, I am under the impression that they are using the MWEC pooled loan program, which is one of those funding options. There's a couple other ones I'll go through as we get down, but the other, just those are kind of the two biggest questions I'm thinking about. And then there's, what are the other MLPs doing? Kind of really looking into each of those programs. Which customers should qualify for the program? We recently passed the PACE program in Hingham for commercial customers. I'm wondering if the board has preference for whether this should be isolated to residential customers. Is this specifically a residential program, or is it something that we're ultimately going to look for multifamily participants as well, municipal participants, and even commercial? But I think with the commercial PACE financing, we might end up wanting to just focus funds on other customers like residents. And then what technology or items should qualify for financing? So I think in the Ipswich program, it's just weatherization, solar, heat pumps. But Then get a list of exactly what qualifies in each of those. So these are the general research questions that we have right now. And then we go through the different financing programs, and we'll have a more robust list of pros and cons for each of them. But identifying like who's actually doing each structure. I can go into these in more detail if you'd like, but I think I can save that for a future meeting. And then for banks, I also have a list at the bottom of this document. So if we wanted to do the bank partnership, I did try to look into what banks are in Hingham. This is all of the financial institutions I could find. Some of them might actually be local versus obviously the larger branches like Santander Bank. We might not want to do something with somebody that's international as opposed to, I think even Hingham Institution for Savings, I saw one in Boston. So I think, I don't know if any of these are just Hingham, but I do know like the other programs that use participating lenders like Taunton and Middleborough, they're using Taunton Federal Credit Union and the other local bank at I think it's Citizens Bank. I have it. Oh, Bristol County Savings Bank. That's right.
Mhm.
So they're working on expanding that list. So we could do outreach to all of the banks listed in Hingham or however we want to go about that. But we're in this research phase right now. Let me just scroll down a bit. We'll also cross compare to the Mass Save Loan Program, which I believe is that local bank structure as well, because they utilize the participating lenders. So that would follow that Taunton Middleborough kind of a template.
So I just want to mention on that, in Hingham, Eastern Bank is the bank that's in Hingham that manages the Mass Save the loan program. So
Right.
so the Eastern Bank branch here in Hingham is really familiar with this kind of program.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. The possible funding sources, I did sort of go through them just now, but the MWEC pooled loan program we'll get more information on. That would be to fund a tariff on bill structure or the on or off bill financing kind of a structure. That wouldn't be for the local bank partnerships. We would do that with the banks themselves. And then HMLP would then buy down interest in that structure. There's a proposal with the DOER that's coming out that was about $22 million. The last time I had seen the update, that was for heat pump rebates and financing in some combination, and in some way was going to be distributed among the MLPs. There would also be a cost share associated with that in their current proposal. It had listed, I think, about a $10 million cost share among the MLPs. I don't know how funding or cost share would be allocated, but that's something we can keep our eyes on, and maybe that wouldn't be considered a sustainable funding source though, because that would be, again, like a short-term payment. And I think if we put the funding in place, we might want to think about the long-term, how would we keep it going if something happened to the funds? Another option would be the green fund, although that might not be the intent of the green fund. There's also the APPA deed grant, which is demonstration of energy efficiency projects. So if we had something that didn't fit into these structures that we're seeing, tariff on bill financing, the local bank partnerships in the types of contracts we're already seeing, we could design our own program and propose it to deed. That would be like a that would be short-term financing. The deed program is up to, I think, $125,000 or $225,000. So that would be to do a couple of demonstration projects if we wanted to test out our own type of pilot structure. And then go forward with the program after we've done a feasibility study through that pilot. And then alternatives, as I mentioned, we have commercial pace in Hingham now, which the board is aware of, so I won't go into too much detail, but that's pretty much where we're at thinking about it at this stage. So I just wanted to kind of give that brief update and get your thoughts so that by the time we come back with a proposal, it's more well-formed.
Did you want us to look at the questions and ask ourselves if those are the right questions? Is that what you want input on?
That would be great. Yeah. Do you want me to keep the screen up on?
Yeah, just pop it up so we can take a look at it. So one of my questions about this is return on investment for whom? The ratepayers? Is that what you're looking at? When you say, what is the return on investment? Who?
Yeah, I would look at it through the lens of the return on investment in kilowatt hour savings and
For customers.
probably, yeah, back to HMLP. Rather than we can look at it from both perspectives. The return that the ratepayer gets on savings on their electric bill would be important, especially with tariff on bill that would be embedded in the actual calculations we do. But return on investment here, I was definitely just thinking about what comes back to the light plant in terms of when somebody installs a project. And if we invest an extra, say, $5,000 buying down their interest, that goes into our payback.
So their increase in kilowatt hour usage would be looked at.
Okay, maybe
Yeah,
I'll
so
understand it better when you when you present an example.
So it would be increased revenue to HMLP because the customers are using kilowatt hours instead of fuel oil or gas or propane for their heat.
Okay, that's for heat pumps, but we're talking about what other items would be eligible for this program, and so there might be technologies that increase the kilowatt hours they buy, and then technologies that decrease the kilowatt hours they buy. So depends on what it is they're using it for, right?
Yep.
And we do have, I would likely use the CET carbon calculator that they have, which shows the returns on investment. You can see that either the demand savings or the financial savings. But this is broad right now because I have to sort of teach myself still how to figure out all of those numbers.
Mhm.
With the CET calculator, though, you have to put a price on carbon, right?
Yes.
So one question I have I don't think is included here, which is so Tom and I did have Tom, I don't remember what we were at a conference where we heard heard a presentation of the on-bill financing approach
Yeah.
to this, and I can't remember where that was. And
Ipswich is doing it, yeah.
yeah, and we explored Ipswich's program a little bit. And one of the things that is not here on your list that's a concern is that the way Ipswich does it is when you do it on the on-bill financing, the light plant takes a financial interest in the technology being installed. And the question is, the idea is the light plant gets an interest in it until it's like it's collateral for the loan. And what happens when the customer doesn't pay the loan? Who's on the hook for that? If the light plant has a financial interest in it, it's collateral for the light plant against the loan. And this came up if you know, if the light plant is providing the loan. I mean, there's a different, one major difference for me is the light plant providing the loan, or is the partner bank providing the loan? And having those conversations about, like, for example, they were some of the things, insulation was something that you could, in weatherization, you could get a loan for that. And my question was, okay, if the customer stops paying the loan and the insulation it belongs to the light plant because the light plant loaned the money, you're going to go and take the insulation out of the house? I don't think so. It's not very effective collateral. So that kind of put me off the idea of the light plant being the lender, which we could do legally, but seemed to me like made more sense to have the banks take that risk than us. So, just to include that aspect of it in your questioning, how does, what happens in each model if the loan is not paid?
So if the light plant were to underwrite the loan, wouldn't it be a case of a lien on a property if it was sold, similar if that property didn't pay their property taxes?
Possibly. Could we, well, I mean, I guess I just want to include this on the list of questions, and we'll look into it more, because it got confusing when I was thinking about it and caused me to, in advance of doing all the research, to prefer the programs where the banks make the loan, but
Right.
we should look into it.
Okay.
And Brianna, I had one follow-up question on the DOER funding. I am assuming that is coming from the Inflation Reduction Act distribution of federal funds. Do we have a timeline on when that program's going to go in effect?
Not yet. They just finished their public comment period on it.
Yeah.
What's the typical, I'm not aware of the typical kind of process where once it's public comment, they incorporate them, and then I have to imagine within the next few months.
Right.
But I don't want to pretend to guess about how the state timelines work.
I mean, assuming stable politics at the federal level, the Inflation Reduction Act is targeting to fund these programs over an extended period of time. So it is probably very positive that funding, however it trickles through to the munis, could be very advantageous in terms of incentivizing these programs. I mean, I think we're already seeing an uptake of these technologies that are coming through the federal incentives now. The adoption of heat pumps is increasing, et cetera. So it's positive.
So Tyler or Mike, any other suggestions on the questions that Brianna should be investigating while she does this?
I think it's really good. Thank you, Brianna.
Yeah, same here. I'll echo that.
Thank you.
Okay, you could take it down, Brianna, I think. So we can see okay, questions or comments from the public? Sue, you have your hand up?
Yes, Sue Wetzel, 239 High Street. I'm sorry I didn't say that before. Just
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you.
I know.
So, no.
Oh, boy. for better or for worse, I'm becoming the face of the community and people are constantly asking me questions about this. And because of the time of the light board meeting, there are just a lot of people say, I can't make that, I can't make that. Someone asked me questions yesterday and I said, well, come to the meeting. So anyway, be that as it may, the questions that I heard was the last flyer that went out in the mail, and I got it myself. I got a real earful about that from a couple of people, and I said, you know, I mean, what is your question? And what they said that the flyer, they wanted to know where the information came from, who wrote it. Did you really read what it said? And I have to admit, I didn't, but they said they would save a copy, but they were totally confused about what a heat pump was. And this
Okay,
person,
Sue, could I just ask you,
yeah,
is this directed, I mean, what's on the agenda is helping bring out put together the questions for this investigation into this financing program.
okay. If you're
I'd
gonna
like to
send
stick to that.
okay, if you're gonna send something out to the public, it needs to be understood. And the people don't even know what a heat pump is. So they're obviously not gonna buy a heat pump if they don't understand what it is. That was my feedback. I was
Okay,
just trying to
thanks.
say it in a way that isn't offensive to somebody. I don't know. I'm just saying, they don't know. It's not a common thing that's used in New England from what I understand. And there needs to be some education around that. And I think the heat pump was the big thing. And the comment was, I can't afford my electric bill now. If a heat pump runs off of electricity, why would I be interested in that? And
Okay, quick answers, you won't have a gas or oil bill. That's the quick answer.
well, apparently that didn't impress them. So I'm
It-
just,
it-
All right, well, we have a short time today
I'm
because
sorry.
Tyler's
I
got to
just-
get off, so I want to stick to the agenda if I could, so thanks very much. Anything, I guess we're, no more comments on the questions for the investigation and financing options. We are 2 months behind on looking at the financials, so I'd like to use this 10 minutes to look at the financials, and if we have to move approving meeting minutes to the next meeting, so we can get off on time, maybe we can do that. So is that okay with everybody if we look at the financials now?
It's a good
Okay.
plan.
All right, let me share. Everyone see that?
Mhm.
Perfect.
All right, so January, kilowatt hour sales were down. Obviously, a warmer month than years past. Revenue was, down from last year, but in line with our expectations. Same with the expenses. Net income for January was $244,000. And again, in January, we hadn't changed the rates, and the PCA was still at 0 for the month of January. Yeah, if you look at 23, that's part of the reason our net income was down, but the other part of that was the rec sales in 23 were a lot higher, I believe, right, John?
Well, in January of 23, we included some rec revenue in this net income. We didn't make the adjustment till after. So that's what the difference is. It's not that the total rec sales were different, it's that this was actually includes about 200,000 of rec revenue.
Okay. So if we go to stop share. Okay. Let's see. Find the right month. So we can see that now.
Can
I
you
can
make
see
it
it.
bigger?
There
That's
we go.
good.
So February, again, our kilowatt hour sold were in line. Revenue increased over the past couple of years, and again, that's the result of the rate increase. Expenses are in line. Our net income, 391,000 for the month of February. Year to date, in line with last year. As far as revenue goes, budget wise, we're slightly above where we had budgeted to be at this point. And again, we'll be watching, this compared to the budget closely to ensure that if we have to make adjustments to stay under the 8%, we have plenty of time to do that. But again, early in the year, and we have plenty of time to as we move forward.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Questions or
Where are-
comments? Yeah,
One thought is just where are we projecting the PCA to go for the remainder of the year?
Joan, do you want to answer?
Yep, I can speak to that. Well, right now, it's too premature to say where it's gonna go, but the rate per the UFS is this company that we use to do our rate study. It's gonna be consistent for the year, for the remainder of the year.
So it's gone from 0 to about a penny, if I recall
Sure.
correctly.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay. Yep.
And, hopefully we'll keep it that way, but I mean, that's our vehicle to adjust our revenue up or down if we have to, obviously. So I say we give this 6 months. We're through the first quarter, which, we implemented the new rates in February, so we really can't tell yet.
Right.
So I say give it another quarter, and then going into our third quarter, which is our revenue producing quarter anyway, we'll have to know, we'll know by that point if we need to adjust it up or down.
Right. And Tom, where do you see our kilowatt sales going? Are we increasing demand for electricity in town, or do you see it still as being flat?
it's been flat, for probably the last, close to 10 years. It's been pretty flat. I mean, at some point we expect it to grow as we see more
Yeah.
electric vehicles and more heat pumps and that type of thing. But
Yeah.
To date, it has been pretty flat. We haven't seen a
Yeah, I think we're certainly starting to see an upward tick throughout the country. Is my
yeah.
gut feeling of
No,
where
I would
our
agree. Yep.
projections are going. We may not yet have seen it in Hingham, but I think that is going to change. That's my gut feeling.
No, I agree. I mean, obviously, if more people are start installing solar, there could be a change in that also. But
I mean, do we have an idea if somebody does switch out to, say, a 4-ton heat pump over gas and oil, just how large a load increase is going to go into the utility bill?
I think we do have some data on that one. PLM did some work for us on load increases as a result of electrification. I can go back.
yeah, we did it. There was a study done, and it was maybe around 21 or 20, and they asked the question, what would happen if you don't imagine that everything is running on electrification in Hingham, but what if half the uses that are currently done with fossil fuels switch to electricity? What would that look like?
Yeah,
And we do have that study.
that was the
somewhere.
analysis group that did that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, it just might be an idea to readdress that. You think of people buying an electric car and maybe having a gas car as well. And then suddenly you've got 12,000 or 15,000 miles going on that electric car.
Yeah.
And the same with the load balance going off of fossil to electric. It's quite substantial, especially when we look at the low income numbers. Should they be able to go to a heat pump and shift their load from fossil to electric, the savings that they can have, but also the additional costs and additional loading on our grid.
I just want to note, Michael, you had mentioned that the PCA went from 0 to about a penny, and just to remind people that prior to November of last year, that PCA was around 2 cents. So
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
we went to 0 for 3 months, and now we've gone back to the 1 cent.
Yeah. And it just to clarify that it is something that we use to balance, and it does go up and down. We try to keep it as stable as we can, but market conditions sometimes dictate that we have to have a larger increase.
Okay, so we're running up against our time constraint today. So I'm going to suggest when we're looking at the updates, we do not need an update on time of use metering project because we just talked about that. And we've also settled the landfill solar question. So we don't need an update on that. There is no update on HMLP solar right now. That leaves a couple of, I just ask if there's anything urgent that you need to tell us, Tom, about the transmission line project, capital projects, or the demand response program issue at this point.
Just on the demand response, we're meeting with MWIC next week to talk about the demand response program with them. E&E is also working with Ned Peaker, who is the demand response provider for MWIC, and there's a chance that there'll be some combined program with E&E and MWIC.
Really? Nice.
Yeah.
Wow, I've been so wanting those people to start cooperating a little bit more, so that's very cheerful to me. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of our agenda for today, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Somebody like to move
So
to adjourn?
moved.
Okay, Tyler.
Second.
Okay, all in favor. Tyler?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Laura, aye. Thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.